for joining. My name is Tim Kravanek. I am on the board of directors of the Washington State chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I am their advocacy leader, if I could actually speak. You're looking at right now a picture of the Washington State Capitol building in Olympia, as it will look hopefully in about a month from now, with the cherry blossoms in full force and nice blue sky. Hopefully people got to enjoy some outside time today on a beautiful day. So just a couple notes on Advocacy Day. So as we know, we're in the middle of, hopefully towards the end of a global pandemic. And so we're doing things a little bit differently than we might normally do things. This year, it's presented us with a great opportunity to do our advocacy. And that's when we meet with our state senators and state representatives about important legislation related to suicide prevention. Typically, we would do that in person on a day. Now we're going to take this as an opportunity to have a kickoff event, which is what this is, and then use this full week for advocacy, or even beyond if we think there's work still needed to do beyond this week. So we'll talk much more about that in a little bit. But first, I'll click on the agenda. Our first speaker will be Justine McClure. Senator Leas, who is the majority leader for the Washington State Senate, he is actually on the Senate floor this evening and is doubtful that he'll be able to break away and join us. There is a small chance that he might be able to. And if he does, we'll pause where we are and let him have words. Absent that, we're working with him and his staff video messaging that we'll also share throughout the week. So not sure if Senator Leas will be able to join us, but again, I do recognize what a strong advocate he is for suicide prevention. And then I'll talk a little bit more about advocacy. So again, like I mentioned, the agenda will be Justine will talk about Washington State suicide prevention, including facts and figures, and I'll hit on advocacy 101, some of our state priorities, what we can do to take action and really make a difference, and then we'll go back. And again, Senator Leas, like I said, it is on the Senate floor. And again, if he's able to join us, we'll break away. Instead, we have our wonderful area director for the state of Washington, AFSP, Justine McClure. Justine is full of hope. She is full of energy. She really makes a difference every day she comes to work. We're excited to have her give some messages on suicide prevention in the state of Washington. Take it away. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tim. I'm hearing you in both areas and both sides. So as we're recording, so I apologize for a little lack right there. Tonight, I am honored to be able to not only share so much.
I'm hearing you in both areas and both sides. So as we're recording, so I apologize for a little lack right there.
Can you still hear me?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so tonight, I just want to thank Tim as he has really shown great leadership for the chapter and for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Going into our advocacy week, we had to shift throughout the year. And this is one of those things that we had to shift, but we're thankful for this opportunity to share a lot more, hopefully, engage more advocates, and have a bigger impact in Olympia and across the state. So if we will continue to go, there we go. So tonight we're talking about suicide prevention. We have two bills that we are currently supporting that need our voices and need us to show up strong and show up proud. In doing so, we want to make sure that we're talking safe about our message and that we understand that when we talk, our stories matter, that our elected officials want to hear our stories and they want to understand what their constituent is dealing with in their home, in their community, in their district. So sharing your story is a top priority, and understanding the impact of your story, whether if you have lived experience, if you've lost somebody, if you're just part of the dynamic of suicide prevention and in the field for a profession, everybody has a story. We want you to share that story. That's what makes a difference. Before we move on, we want to just talk a couple things about sharing your story. So we have some language do's and don'ts. For instance, committed suicide. We're working tirelessly to change that so that we focus on died by suicide or ended their life. And then also failed and or successful attempts, and just being really careful on how we're describing and what we're saying. So suicide attempt or death by suicide. We want to make sure that you're in a safe place right now and as you continue throughout this week. That is critical and crucial to our work. If you're not in a safe place, if you're not in a spot that is good, that's okay. That is totally fine. We want you to be ensured that your support is heard and that we value everything that you bring to AFSP and your voice to Olympia. We also want to make sure that we avoid, as you go into telling your story and you're in that safe spot to be able to share, we want to avoid utilizing any sort of methods as far as descriptive. So maybe how you go into detail about how somebody died by suicide. We want to minimize that. We don't want to talk about that. And the reason being is people understand. We want them to hear and listen to our facts and our figures and to your voice and to your story. And so being very focused on sharing your story, but without going into the detail of the method. We also hope and really encourage educating. Educate your elected officials. It is your time to say, this is my experience and this is why it's important. We also hope that you will inspire hope, inspire that, you know what, this isn't doom and gloom. We do have a voice and we do have a plan and we know we can save lives. We want a hopeful message. We want to leave the room, the virtual room. We want to leave it with more hope than when we came into it. And you can do that. You have the power to do that. If you can, if you have time, if they ask questions about resources, we definitely encourage you to talk about the Lifeline and the crisis text line. Those are two large resources that are statewide and nationally wide. As Tim will go into detail, there's a long 1-800 digit number that right now is the Lifeline. It is a priority of the states to get funding at the state level for the switch to 988, which is a 3-digit crisis line. So we're converting the long number that it's hard to remember, I sometimes don't even remember it, to something that will be just as much utilized as 911 and switching that to 988. And feel free to practice. Practice makes us all better. Feel free to really take some time, take a deep breath, and be excited, not be nervous. They want to hear from you. Next slide, Tim. So here are some facts and figures that we go through here at AFSP. So all of our numbers that come from the CDC are 2 years out. So anything that we are going to report will be what the CDC reports out. So our most recent is 2019. In 2019, we lost over 48,000 people to suicide nationwide. It's the second leading cause of death, as you can see, for 10 to 34-year-olds. Overall, nationwide, it's the 10th leading cause of death. And here's a stat that is interesting. 36.5% of people who die by suicide are over the age of 55. We also want to take light and show the impact that those 48,000 people, there's an estimated 25 suicide attempts, which means there's over 1 million attempts each year in the United States. This is a fact sheet that was sent out and that you will have access to. This is on our website, our Advocacy Action Center. You will be able to see everything when you get the links, and I'll post the links as Tim goes through his presentation. So you can see all this facts and figures. There's three areas. There's a high rate, a middle rate, and the lower rate. And we're right in the middle. So we definitely have room to grow here in Washington State to really get our voices out and change the tide, if you will. We'll change our numbers around. As you can see, we're just over 15%. So let's dig into Washington State numbers. Again, this is 2019. The numbers that we report for AFSP, we want to make sure is vetted, and scientifically, we know that it's correct, any information coming out. So in 2019, here in Washington State, 1,252 people died by suicide. It's the second leading cause of death from 10 to 34-year-olds, much like the national average. Third leading cause of death, 35 to 54. And we want to take note that it's the 8th leading cause of death overall in Washington State. This is one other sheet that you can take a look at afsp.org/statistics. And this sheet dives into our numbers just a little bit more. It's a little bit more visually pleasing. This was sent to every single elected official in Olympia earlier today, along with showing our support and our commitment from AFSP. So this is where we kick off tonight, because we need, now more than ever, we need your support. We need your voice to be able to amplify the things that were just sent out. And right now is critical, and Tim will go into some more detail as I keep alluding to. But I want to take a moment and I want to thank you. It takes a lot of courage to be here tonight, to share your story, and to be willing to reach out. You are saving lives, and you are impacting those in Washington State and really around the nation. It's an honor for me to work beside each and every one of you. And I want to make sure as we continue this work, not only through this week, that you know you matter and your voice matters. So if you're not connected to the chapter, please get connected. We'd love to have you. And as we continue through this week, we're here for you and we support you, and anything that we can do to elevate these two bills is our top priority. So again, I want to thank you. It's an honor. And now I will pass it over to Tim.
All right. Thank you, Justine. A super important message, very powerful. Thank you so much. I'm Tim Kravanek. I'm, like I said at the beginning of the call, on board of directors of the AFSP for Washington State and our advocacy leader. I think all of us are probably here because we've either lost someone or have struggled, had some sort of suicidal ideation, friends or family. I'm no exception. This wonderful girl on the screen, that's my daughter, Nina. She died by suicide when she was just after her 15th birthday, not a couple months after her 15th birthday in 2016. everything I do, I'm doing it for her and her memory. So her memory lives on in all of the work we're doing. So you see it right here, Team Nina. I have a bit of pride in that, especially with my wife, Dawn, who leads Team Nina, has led it for the last, since 2017. And it's a team we charter for the Out of the Darkness walks in the fall, and I think we've raised probably about $50,000 over the last several years in honor of Nina. And it's going to the wonderful initiatives that AFSP is leading related to research, education, loss services, and advocacy, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. So again, and I'm very proud to talk about Nina whenever I can. So I'm very proud to have her name behind me as we move forward with this advocacy work. So why advocacy? This is really an opportunity to make a difference. AFSP does advocacy both at the local and national levels, the state and national levels. And advocacy is when there is legislation. This is how we really make change. When there's legislation that is being proposed, which is sometimes comes from AFSP, sometimes comes from individuals, other organizations, the lawmakers. It's our opportunity to go and make a personal connection, like Justine was saying, with our state senators and state representatives. And it can be so powerful. You can see in just last year, there were over 75 state suicide prevention and mental health laws that became, or mental health bills that became law. And it's really that personal connection is so important as we advocate for legislation. Where do we make an impact? 12 students, crisis lines, farmers, veterans, all these words on this part with legislation. And we'll get into, Justine mentioned the 988 legislation, which is certainly the top priority this year, but there's some other pretty cool bills out there that are related to K through 12. You'll have the opportunity to, if there's a certain bill that is part of your passion, you can go and make an extra push for that legislation as well. Like I said, the legislators from personal experience may have legislation. That's us, the constituents. What's important to us, and then, like I mentioned, in many cases, writes model legislation for legislators, puts a template so they have a good. They don't
have to start from scratch. Tim, can you go back real briefly? We lost you, your mic for a second.
Oh, okay. On this page. Was it on this page, Justine?
Yeah. Oh, now we lost you again. Yeah, I think we gotcha.
Okay, so legislation then will come from the legislators. It'll come from the constituents, the organizations like AFSP. Pretty much anybody can influence legislation that is written as a bill that hopefully becomes law. How does a bill become a law? I learned this when I was a kid and watching Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, Tim, you keep going.
Can you hear me if I do it like this?
Yeah.
Is that better like this, Justine?
You're still going in and out just a little bit. If you're closer, that might be better.
What was that, Justine? I'm sorry.
If you're closer, that might be better.
Okay. All right, any better now?
Yeah.
All right. So Bill, again, this is just basic government 101. So there's two houses, the House and the Senate. Either house can introduce a bill, then it goes to the other house. They may make changes, amendments, and then it goes to the governor for signature. So it's the same in every state. It's the same in Congress. So that's how does the bill become the law? My sound still okay, Justine? Okay.
Yes, you're good. Thank you.
All right. My cursor around the screen. So connecting with lawmakers.
Your sound keeps going in and out.
Picking up again.
What was that? No.
How about this? Is it better like this? No.
Oh, now you came back.
Is that better like this?
Towards the end, yeah.
Thank you. Again, apologize for the technical difficulties, but that's the way we live these days.
Right. Instead of a projector not clicking forward, it's now voice or some sort of Zoom. Oh. So as Tim is fixing the presentation and hopefully his audio, I'll jump in and talk a little bit about AFSP, where you can find resources directly at your fingertips. So the best way is to go to afsp.org. There you can see an ample supply of information, whether if it's you just want information, stats, figures, or if you want help for a loved one or even yourself. It's a very user-friendly website, and I encourage you to share that, write it in your notepad, and have that out so that people can see it and you can refer back to it. And Tim, I'm going to do a check-in. Are you good?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'll talk like this. I might be close. My face might be really close to the TV, but hopefully you'll hear me better. All right, the next piece I wanted to discuss was making that connection with your lawmakers. Justine hit on this a little bit at the beginning, and it's all about, really making that personal connection. I'm going to pause. Is audio still okay? All right. Offer to help, offer to be a resource, follow through. Always make that follow through. And if you don't know the answer to a question, that's all right. We have a ton of resources that can help answer any of those questions that the lawmakers may have. So just say, hey, I'll get back to you and reconnect with Justine or myself, or go on afsp.org. And you can find some of the answers to your questions. The one other important thing we can do is really build this relationship year-round. It doesn't have to be a one-time thing. Send emails, engage with your representative or state senator on social media, make one-on-one visits or one-on-one phone calls if we're not able to visit in person. Get on the go to town halls, community meetings, get on your legislators' newsletters or emails. I get this from my legislators all the time. And then if you have the opportunity to even testify at a hearing, either in writing or verbally, can be so impactful with your elected officials. The Washington State Legislature, I'll refer to this website at the bottom, leg.wa.gov. That's where you can find information on bills and where they are. You can track any legislation. You can see who the sponsors are of this super important legislation. You can find who your legislators are if you're not sure who they are, and learn about where the Capitol complex, where they're located, and then learn even more about government. AFSP has a series of webinars and sample meeting videos, issue briefs, bill tracking, and fact sheets. Fact sheets are like what Justine was showing at the beginning of the call. So you can see this a shot of what the webpage looks like related to public policy priorities, crisis lines, mental health parity. So a lot of important legislation work with the national organization. So what does that mean for Washington State? Washington State, as Justine mentioned at the very beginning, and I like how my face turns the color of whatever's on the screen. The top priority is funding for 988. The language is, you can read what it says on the chart. I'm going to hit on a couple other pages related to 988. Whoops. And so just a little bit of a background. Last October, the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act was passed into law. So what it does is it designates 988 as the new 3-digit phone number for National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, requires full implementation by July of 2022, and then it empowers states to enact laws that will fully fund 988 the same way as we do 911, which would be a monthly customer service fee. And just for reference, I looked at my 911 service fee on our phone bill, and it was, I think, less than $1 a month. And the 988 legislation wouldn't be more than that. I will say one very important reminder, 988 is not in effect yet on all carriers. I think T-Mobile does have 988, but most other carriers do not yet. So again, if you or a loved one or someone you know is in crisis, call here's the number that it was before, 1-800-273-TALK. So imagine, and this is why I love this 988 as an option. Imagine being in crisis and trying to remember 1-800-273-TALK and figuring out what TALK are on the dial. So this is going to be this will save lives. This will save lives, and we can really make this happen. And this is where our advocacy can be so important. The AFSP urges every state to have legislation. Washington State was the first state this year to introduce legislation for 988. Here's what the funding does. It makes sure that call centers have capacity to answer increased call volume. Again, we don't want people in crisis calling and being put on hold. I can't imagine anything worse than that happening to somebody in crisis. Callers are connected with a center in their own state. Again, this could you imagine being in crisis and being in Puyallup and getting somebody in Kansas who doesn't know how to pronounce Puyallup? We need to make that personal connection with somebody in your own state. And then this last bullet, wraparound services. So this is the opportunity for callers could get services later when they're not in crisis, and they're maybe in a better time for them to get suicide prevention or mental health services. So this is the type of thing that there are a series of crisis lines. Here's the one that we recognize: 1-800-273-TALK, 8255. There's a crisis text line, 74171. The Trevor Lifeline and the Trevor Chat for LGBT youth, a trans lifeline, and a SAGE LGBT elder hotline for older LGBT. So there are some specialized lines for people today. Priority number 2, so schools and youth. Here are some bills under consideration for schools and youth that are currently in some level of maturity in the state legislature. The first one is suicide review teams. So that would be teams of people who are looking at the data related to suicide and looking at the circumstances and looking for common factors. Again, if you understand some of the causes, maybe there's opportunity to increase the effort around those areas. The second one, creating confidential youth safety and well-being tip line. That's so people experiencing bullying or domestic violence. This would be a line where if you witness someone who was experiencing bullying or domestic violence, or you experienced it yourself and wanted to provide a tip, but wanted to keep it anonymous, this bill would do that. 5030, develop a comprehensive school counseling program. This one says that by the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year, each school district will develop and implement a written plan for a comprehensive school counseling program based upon regularly updated standards. So it's basically a mandate for the schools to keep their counseling plans current. And this is an area where there's a great opportunity for more counselors, for better information with counselors, as there in many cases an early line of connection with youth. Next one, promoting student access to information about behavioral health resources. This is a mandate that mandates that tells the school districts to, on your website put in mental health information or links to mental health organizations like AFSP. So on the school's website, you could have a link to AFSP. On the school's website, you would have the crisis line or other information related to mental health and suicide prevention. And then this last bill, addressing secondary trauma in the K through 12 workforce. Secondary trauma would be for teachers or counselors who are constantly dealing with kids who are under pressure or under stress or dealing with suicidal ideation or other significant issues, and the impact it has on that person, on the teacher or the counselor. So this would be, what can we do to help those people as well as they experience their own traumas through dealing with people who are experiencing trauma. So all of these bills are in some way, shape, or form active in the legislative session this year. Just to note, HB is House bill, so that would be one that originated in the House. SB is Senate bill, which is one that would originate in the Senate. Okay, so now what do we do about taking action? Take action this week. What can we do? Email your legislators via the AFSP Action Center. Send them an email. That's a couple minutes to do that, so it doesn't take a lot of time. And I'll talk through each of these in a little bit more detail. Schedule a phone meeting, share your connection to a vignette, engage your community by recruiting other activists. And then certainly follow AFSP National, AFSP Advocacy, hashtag American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Washington State. Follow the Washington State chapter, and another way to make a good connection. So emailing your legislators, it just takes a couple minutes. The templates are out there, and so it's just a very, very easy thing to do in the Action Center. Call your legislators. So this is one thing we're asking that you could do this week, would be make that person connect about some of the issues we've talked about. Highlight that one issue that you feel passionate about. Again, we've talked about the 988 crisis line. We've talked about some school legislation. There's also some legislation related to veteran suicide and other areas. And don't forget to send a thank you. The little things, it's so important just to have send a thank you note when you're done. And then after your meeting, you can again send the thank you email and include your vignette. On the right is my example of a vignette. So why do I advocate? A little bit about Nina and why I'm advocating, where I'm from, and a picture, a little bit of a personalization. And share dates for upcoming chapter events, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then offer to be that resource for your legislator, and really make that personal. So the final reminder is really schedule your phone meetings to take place over the next couple of weeks. We're trying to do as much as we can this week, but if it's next week, that's okay too. These bills they typically don't move fast, but once they get to a certain point, they start moving pretty fast. And so we have, I think, between now and the middle of the month before the final hearings of bills. So we're prioritizing this week. We're getting great momentum. But if next week, it's good as well. Complete a feedback form and then send that thank you note. Laura Bradley, volunteer, you may be getting emails from her. You can connect back with Laura at this email or myself at this email, and then Justine through the AFSP website. The last thing I have are some upcoming events, some really exciting events that we have for this chapter. On April 24th is the Campus Out of the Darkness Day of Action. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so there will be a lot of information coming up. June 5th, Pause for Prevention. Hike for Hope in June, a Bike for Hope in June. September is Suicide Prevention Month, which is really when we kick off the Out of the Darkness walks, which will be happening, I think, and Justine can give you more details. I think there are 8 walks this year planned. Last year it was virtual because of the pandemic. This year, we don't know yet. We're hoping that we can get together in person, but we will do we'll follow the public health, the guidance of our public health experts. With that, I would like to say thank you. I'm going to pass it back to Justine for a couple of closing comments and open it up for questions.
Okay, I think there you go. Thank you, Tim, and thank you for going through, and even though with the struggle and being patient with the audio, so thank you very much. This week and right now in this time, it is critical that we get as many voices from as many parts of the state to talk about suicide, to talk about suicide prevention, especially the 988 bill. This bill will provide services that will be automatically turned on July 1st of 2022. So it will automatically happen. There'll be advertising. And if we don't have funding at the state level for 988 crisis centers, we won't have calls answered. And that is just not acceptable. But this week, next week, our voices, AFSP, has the opportunity to have the last word, to connect with our elected officials, to share our stories, and to urge them, and to tell them why it's important, and to urge them towards hopefully voting in 988 and the funding for 988. You saw some of the other bills, and those are just as important, and we want as much highlight on suicide prevention as possible. Other like organizations have already held their advocacy days or weeks. And so we have the opportunity to wrap up this year right now and really talk about suicide prevention. Share your story, share your impact, and know that as you go on and create the email, that action center, it takes like less than 2 minutes. You're going to be heard. You're going to be seen. If you can set up a Zoom meeting with your elected officials, amazing. Get connected to them. Call them up, talk to them, as Tim said. The more that we can engage individuals around the conversation, the more we will bring down the stigma around mental health. And we will be able to provide hope and healing for everybody across the state. Again, I want to thank you. This takes a lot of effort. it takes a lot to come out and share your story and be available for AFSP, and also to talk about suicide, talk about your story. So as we go into this next week, once you take action, reach out, have other people in your community take action as well. We want to flood Olympia with hope, with a stern dialogue that we need 988 funding. But most importantly, we want people to know that there are people out there. They're not alone, and that AFSP is there as a resource and as a connector to so many things for suicide prevention and mental health. So as we close this evening, we are going to open up the chat function and the voice function. So if you have any questions, Tim and I are here. And we look forward to hearing and checking in with each and every one of you as the week goes on. And as things move on too, you might get an action alert from us saying, hey, we need to bombard this person. We need to bombard this elected official, this representative. They need to know. So stay tuned, check your emails. Sometimes our emails get put into the do not disturb, go away emails. So make sure you check that out. And I'm here. My contact information is on the chat. And we so greatly appreciate your time this evening and moving into next week. So without further ado, if you have a question that you want to put in to chat, Phil, sending letters and emails, sending text to those I know personally, excellent. Phil is amazing advocate, an amazing voice, and strong at sharing his story. And I think that just shows just a few items that are at our fingertips. If we can engage, if we can put ourselves out there, amazing, amazing. All right. Do I see any other, does anybody have any other questions? You should be able to unmute yourself if you can, or if you would like to.
All right, hi, I'm Alondra, I'm 15, and I remember you guys saying something about getting in communication with your state legislators. If I wanted to, how could I do that?
Great question, and thank you. And wow, to start and be out there at your age is absolutely amazing. So I applaud you, and I'm so thankful for individuals like you and leaders like you to utilize your voice. When you sign up through afsp.org in the Action Center, you automatically put in your address, and it will auto-populate your elected officials. You can also go onto the legislative website, wa.gov, and just type in the search function, and you'll be able to find your legislation representatives that way as well. But I would definitely just let AFSP do that work. And once you get that link going, and then you'll get an email with your elected officials, and it will actually pop up right there as well. Thank you, Tim. So you can go to that led.wa.gov and find your person to reach out to.
Yeah, and let me add, they will love to hear from you. They will want to. They will be thrilled to hear from you. If there's any nerves or anything, man, they're just gonna. They'll love to hear from you.
All right, thank you.
And I will also add on this one, attending a town hall or community meeting. So find out what legislative district you're in based on your zip code, and all of our legislators have town halls and community meetings. Mine just had one, I think, last week. So and they're virtual right now. They're all through Zoom, I think, so they're pretty easy to.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Well, I know you all are fired up and ready to go storm, or I shouldn't say that word, but ready to go tell and share our voices out in Olympia and share your experience and your story. Will absolutely be amazing. And I know that you're going to be saving lives as we continue this work. So thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. And look forward to hearing any feedback. Please, if you do have questions, you can email me at jmcclure@afsp.org. And we look forward to hearing the success stories and the questions, and also seeing you around the chapter. So thank you so much for attending this evening, and let's go talk.
All right, well, before we leave, I kind of did have another question.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm a high school student, and I've been wondering how I can get a little bit more involved with my community, because I have an idea and I think it could really help, especially with mental health. I think that we should start teaching mental health a little bit younger, especially 4th to 5th grade. And again, that would be again with the puberty lessons, because I think it's a little silly how they teach us about our bodies, but they really don't teach us anything about our mental health. So how could I take that action into plan?
Well, great question. And we actually are just launching what's called Gizmo. My screen's not going to show it. And what I would love to do is connect with you, because we are able to do free readings of Gizmo. So it's a read along for younger, from 5 to 12 is the target audience. And Gizmo walks through feelings and who's a safe person. It's absolutely amazing. And I think it would be a great opportunity for you to, we could schedule some read-alongs and have parents and kids join and promote that. And then you could do the read-along, and one of us could be there for questions or anything like that. And that might be so awesome and so needed. And we need energy like you at the chapter, and volunteering and being able to be open about mental health and suicide prevention. So I would love to talk to you about that opportunity if possible.
Yeah, of course.
Which city do you live in?
I live in Maple Valley.
Maple Valley, okay. So I'm in Mukilteo, and Mukilteo has a Mukilteo Youth Advisory Committee. And I think most cities have something like that. So you might check the City of Maple Valley website and see what kind of organization they might have sponsored by the city for youth. The one in Mukilteo has the last